AITA for rejecting my childhood sweetheart, now a single mom, after she ignored me? Hey everyone, I'm Ethan, I'm in my 20s, and I live in Austin, Texas, in the suburbs to be exact. This story goes back to my high school days at Westlake High. That's when I met Olivia, the girl who, back then, seemed more than perfect to me. Sweet freckles on her face, always smiling, and the fastest girl in our class in the 100-meter dash. I'll never forget watching her run at the Darrell K. Royal Stadium with that inexhaustible energy and her hair blowing in the wind. I liked her from that moment on. But between my shyness and my braces, let's just say things weren't looking too good for me in the romance department. Throughout adolescence, Olivia and I shared many classes. She was quite sociable. I wasn't. I preferred video games, reading fantasy books, and staying home on a Friday night, while she was always out doing something fun with her friends. At some point, when we were both around 15 or 16, I worked up the courage and confessed that I liked her. I remember doing it with a trembling voice and sweaty hands. Her reaction wasn't to outright make fun of me, but she did say something like, "No, Ethan, I don't think this would work." It was practically a polite excuse. And by the way, it became crystal clear that, to her, I wasn't exactly attractive or popular. Meanwhile, she was dating one of the guys from the football team, a guy named Caleb, very athletic, with the typical muscular arms and infectious laugh. So, for me, the story ended there. Or at least I thought so. Time passed, I finished school, distanced myself from that environment where I never quite fit in, and dedicated myself to studying computer engineering at Rice University in Houston. My parents had always told me that if I focused on my studies, I would have the world at my feet. And the truth is, even though I'm not a genius, I worked hard, got involved in programming projects, volunteer work, and internships. It was during my first semesters of college that I met a great group of friends who, without me realizing it, started helping me come out of my shell. Among those friends are Nathan and Lucas, with whom I still have a strong friendship. Seeing me so immersed in books and screens, they invited me to join them at the Reckling Park gym. At first I was skeptical. I felt like weightlifting wasn't my thing at all, but the truth is, little by little, I got hooked on the routine. I discovered that I didn't need to be the biggest or strongest guy in the world. Simply feeling healthier and with more energy really appealed to me. Plus, Nathan and Lucas were the kind of people who wouldn't let you give up, always with comments like, "Come on, Ethan, 3 more reps," or "You're not going to quit now, are you?" That constant support was key. Thanks to them and my determination, I began to notice changes. I lost a little weight, my muscles toned up a bit, and above all, my self-esteem rose to a level I never thought possible. At the same time, my programming skills also grew, and I was called to work part-time at a cybersecurity startup in the domain. There I met the man who would later become my mentor, Ryan, a guy with vast experience in the tech sector. Ryan taught me advanced programming and advised me on how to handle myself in meetings and networking events. 3 years flew by. During that time, I didn't hear much from Olivia. I had her on social media, but she hardly posted anything. She barely uploaded some photos with friends in different parts of the country, selfies at concerts, or vague comments about her life. It's not like I was dying to know about her life, to be honest. I was too busy with my career, my new circle of friends, and the experience of, for the first time, starting to date girls who accepted me for who I was. For me, my high school crush was long forgotten. Well, life went on until about a year ago. I graduated with a very good GPA. While looking for a full-time job, I was fortunate enough to return to the same startup where I did my internship, but now with a more formal contract and better pay. It was during this period of new beginnings that I received an invitation to a high school reunion. To tell the truth, I didn't really want to go, because most of the people I was in contact with already knew how I was doing. However, Nathan encouraged me to attend. He told me, "You have to close chapters, Ethan, and who knows, you might run into an old friend." Thinking about it, it seemed like it could be interesting. When I arrived at the reunion, at Odd Duck in downtown Austin, I recognized some faces. Caleb, the same athletic guy from back then, although without the long hair. Lily, who was the brainy girl in class, now a successful lawyer. And of course, there was Olivia. My first impression upon seeing her was mixed. On one hand, I was surprised by how much her style of dress had changed. She looked more mature, with a maternal air, yet attractive. On the other hand, I noticed she wasn't wearing a wedding ring. There was a group greeting, somewhat awkward, and then everyone started talking to different people. Amidst laughter and memories, I heard rumors that Olivia was a single mother of a beautiful girl named Sophia, and that she was working part-time at a daycare while living with her parents in Tarrytown to save money. I was glad to know that, despite the difficulties, she was getting by. However, my curiosity was piqued. What had become of her plans to go to college and become a physical trainer, something she mentioned a couple of times in adolescence? Whatever it was, I assumed life had thrown her some unexpected curveballs. Midway through the evening, while I was chatting with a group that included Lily, Olivia approached me. It was strange, because we weren't close enough for that situation to seem natural. However, she was very friendly, asking me how I was doing, congratulating me on my job. I told her a little about the cybersecurity company and how much I enjoy what I do. In a moment of silence, she said, "Wow, I had no idea you were earning so well at your company. I always knew you were very smart, but I never imagined how far you'd go. And you don't think about starting a family soon, Ethan? With that stability, you could give your children everything." At another point in my life, when I was crazy about her, maybe I would have dreamed of her looking at me like that. But, at that moment, I felt a mixture of discomfort and confusion. To try to lighten the mood, I asked her about Sophia, what her daughter was like, her likes, if she looked like her or Caleb, etc. Olivia's expression immediately lit up, and she spent a good while enthusiastically describing how bright and friendly the girl was. She showed me pictures on her phone, and yes, she looked adorable. There was no doubt about that. We ended our drinks on good terms. However, as we said goodbye, Olivia said, "Hey, we could do this again next week, couldn't we? If you want, I can invite you to dinner at my parents' house in Tarrytown. They get along really well with my high school friends." The truth is, I was a little stunned. Invite me to dinner with her parents so suddenly, after years without contact? I didn't want to sound rude, so I told her I'd think about it. In reality, I had a lot of doubts. On the one hand, I didn't think it was a bad idea to catch up, to meet Sophia, and see how we could at least resume a genuine friendship. But, on the other hand, I felt like this was moving too fast. Also, the memory surfaced that, in adolescence, she didn't even see me as an option. She rejected me without a second thought. And yes, people change, situations change. But what if it was just a coincidence that, now that she sees me established, she's interested in me? I returned to my work routine at the cybersecurity company. After finishing my workday, I arranged to meet my friends, Nathan and Lucas, at the Dogwood to watch a basketball game. At one point during the evening, while the game was on, I couldn't resist the urge and told them both what was happening with Olivia. I told them about the invitation to her parents' house and my skepticism. Lucas, who is more impulsive, said something like, "Bro, you should go. Maybe it was fate that separated you before, and now it's fate bringing you together." While Nathan, more serious and analytical, replied, "If I were you, I'd take it easy. People sometimes approach you for reasons you can't imagine. It's not a bad idea to meet Sophia and spend time with Olivia, but take it slow." So, I ended the night with my head more confused than before. The next morning, I found a message from Olivia on my phone, inviting me directly to lunch the following Sunday. She insisted that I not worry about anything, that her parents fondly remembered former classmates, and that Sophia would be delighted to meet me. A shiver ran down my spine. Why, out of the blue, would she want to introduce me to her daughter and family so quickly? I consulted with my mother, Madison, who has always been supportive. I told her everything, omitting very personal details, but making her aware of the situation. She said, "Look, Ethan, the past is the past. Maybe Olivia has matured and really just wants to rebuild her life. She's a single mother who maybe feels more secure with you because she knows you from before. But it's not your responsibility either. If you don't feel comfortable, follow your intuition." I heeded that advice. I followed my intuition. For the time being, I decided to postpone dinner. I didn't say no outright, but I argued that there were problems at work and I would have to work overtime, which was partially true. Olivia reacted with a short message, "Okay, let me know when you can." What I didn't expect was the wave of messages that started arriving a few days later, from numbers I didn't recognize. Messages from Olivia's friends, or at least that's what they claimed, asking me why I was playing games with her, why I was so selfish, and why I didn't have the courage to give her a chance now that she had the courage to approach me. I even received messages from Bella, a girl I vaguely remembered from school, saying that I had no right to make her suffer. Suffer? But we hadn't even had anything formal. We weren't a couple. There was no commitment. The first person I showed this barrage of messages to was Nathan. He read a few and threw his hands up in the air. "This is very weird, Ethan. Why are so many people getting involved out of nowhere?" Lucas agreed when he found out. He found it very strange that Olivia was capable of involving her friends to pressure me. Even worse, some of those messages bordered on aggressive, as if I were the villain for not wanting to go to a simple dinner with her family. From that moment on, I began to feel an external pressure that I didn't like at all. I had no intention of being rude to Olivia, much less ignoring her completely, but I also didn't want to be forced to return to a dynamic where it seemed like everyone was judging me for not running into her arms. That image of the sweet Olivia I remembered from high school began to tarnish, and inwardly, I wondered if she had changed so much, or if I simply never really knew her. It was then that I knew I would need to talk to her directly, face to face, to stop this tsunami of messages, but at the same time, I didn't want to hurt her or appear completely insensitive. There began an internal dilemma that accompanied me for weeks, and that resulted in a rather intense confrontation. But I'll tell you about that in the next part, because things got out of control. Between my friends supporting me, some of Olivia's relatives calling me on the phone, and new revelations that left me speechless, I had to carefully decide what I wanted to do with Olivia, with Sophia, and with my own peace of mind. I, for my part, didn't want to fight with anyone. I just wanted a little peace and clarity. So I decided to talk directly to Olivia. She was the source of all this commotion, or at least the person who could calm it down immediately. By then, I had been avoiding the family dinner she had invited me to for a couple of weeks, with valid work excuses, but also with a certain fear of encountering a situation I didn't know how to handle. Finally, the opportunity for a meeting arose that I couldn't postpone any longer. I ran into Olivia at Barton Creek Square Mall, where I had gone to buy a birthday present for my niece. It was completely casual. I came out of a children's clothing store and, turning around, there was Olivia with Sophia. The girl, about 4 or 5 years old, looked a little shy. However, her curious expression touched me. Olivia, for her part, seemed relieved to see me. "Ethan, what a coincidence," she exclaimed with a nervous smile. "Come say hi to Sophia." "Hi, Sophia," I said softly. "Your mommy has told me nice things about you." The little girl just mumbled a shy hi as she clung to her mother's hand. Then, it was Olivia who took the initiative. "Do you have a few minutes to talk? I don't want to bother you, but I need to explain some things." I agreed. We sat on a bench in the main hallway while Sophia played with a doll she took out of her backpack. I had the most direct conversation with Olivia since adolescence. First, she apologized, assuring me that she never intended for her friends to harass me with messages. She explained that, at some point, she commented in her Facebook group that I was distancing myself, and that she felt bad, perhaps frustrated. Her friends, with good or bad intentions, took sides and started writing to me without her being able to stop them in time. I asked her why she felt such urgency to see me at her house, with her parents and with Sophia. Her answer was honest. "I feel like I've missed opportunities in my life, Ethan, and now that I see you, I feel like I'm missing another one. I won't lie to you. I like the person you are today, not just physically, which of course, what a transformation, but that confidence, that stable job, that maturity you didn't have before. I messed it up when we were teenagers. I mean, I know it wasn't even anything formal, but I regretted many times being so superficial. Now, as a mother, I value other things. And yes, I thought that you could even love me and Sophia." I confess that her words stirred something in me. Seeing her like that, so vulnerable, made me empathize in part with how difficult it must be to raise a daughter without the support of a partner. Still, I couldn't help but feel a tinge of resentment when I remembered her. "No, Ethan, I don't think this would work," from those years, when my appearance wasn't the best and when my self-esteem was at rock bottom. However, I knew I couldn't stay stuck in the past. nor could I sacrifice my current desires for freedom just to fill her emotional voids. Olivia, I said, trying to remain calm, it's not that I want to hurt you or play games with you. I'm just not sure I want anything serious with anyone right now, especially when there's a child involved. Don't get me wrong, I'm not judging your motherhood, but it's a lot of responsibility for me. I'm still learning to live my own life, exploring my opportunities to travel, my career. She nodded, biting her lip. For a second, she looked like she was about to cry. I, inwardly, debated whether I was the villain of the story, or if I was simply being honest with my feelings. It's funny how people often call someone selfish for not wanting to be forced into a commitment. The conversation ended with a tacit agreement. Each of us would understand the other's position without pressure. We said goodbye with an awkward hug, and Olivia left with Sophia. I thought that would be the end of the drama, but it wasn't. A couple of days later, I received a direct message from one of her friends, Levi, the most insistent of the group, that said things like, "Stop making Olivia suffer. If you're not going to love her, tell her to her face and don't use Sophia as an excuse to run away. Be brave." Again, I got that feeling that they were attacking me for no reason. The worst happened a week later, when one of my coworkers, Jason, showed me a social media post insinuating that I was leading on a single mother only to humiliate her. They didn't mention my name, but the clues were more than obvious. It was a fairly long text, supposedly written by a friend of the affected party, narrating how I was refusing to be a substitute dad. Few would connect me to that story, but the mere fact that someone could defame me like that outraged me. That night, I talked with Lucas and Nathan via video call. Lucas suggested putting the cards on the table publicly, maybe clarifying on my profile that I have no problem with Olivia. We're just not dating. Nathan, more cautious, told me that the best thing to do was keep a low profile and not engage. The next day, I called Olivia directly to clarify the social media situation. Her reaction was one of complete surprise. "Post a defamatory post, Ethan? I swear it wasn't me. Maybe one of my friends wrote that on their own. Let me see what I can do." The result was that, indeed, Bella, the same one who sent me messages, had published that note, trying to protect Olivia. After a tense discussion between them, Bella ended up taking down the post and offered me an apology so brief that it barely felt sincere. Still, I felt some relief knowing that the post wouldn't spread any further. At that point, I was already saturated. Although the issue seemed resolved, a bad taste remained in my mouth. My quiet life, focused on my career and enjoying my independence, had been shaken by something that hadn't even become a formal relationship. Why so much commotion, so much insistence? I decided that, for my mental health, I would distance myself. The best thing to do was to let Olivia go her way with Sophia, and I would go mine. I had no intention of being cruel, but I wasn't going to feign a love I didn't feel. However, the story didn't end there. An unexpected twist occurred when I received a call from an unknown number late at night. And, to my surprise, it wasn't one of Olivia's meddling friends, but Caleb. Yes, Sophia's biological father, whom I hadn't spoken to since high school. Just when I thought the whole mess with Olivia and her friends had reached, or at least was nearing, its end, I received a call that changed the course of things. It was close to midnight, on a weeknight. I was reviewing some security reports on my laptop when my phone rang with an unknown number, from a Dallas area code. At first, I almost didn't answer, but curiosity got the better of me. "Hello," I said, my voice confused. "Ethan, it's Caleb. I don't know if you remember me." How could I not remember him? He was Sophia's biological father, and the guy who, in a way, marked my adolescence by being the popular one Olivia preferred over me. But at the same time, his tone, somewhat nervous, caught my attention. To be honest, I never thought Caleb would contact me, especially after Olivia mentioned that he practically disappeared from their lives a while back. "Yes, Caleb, I remember you. What are you calling about?" Caleb cleared his throat on the other end of the line. Then, he uttered a sentence that froze me. "I need to talk to you man to man. I'm not looking for a fight, just to clarify something I learned recently. Can we meet in person?" At that moment, I had a flashback to Westlake. Caleb and I were never close friends, but we shared a couple of classes, and even though he was the athletic and popular guy, He wasn't one of those who bullied me. We just lived in different worlds. I was puzzled to imagine what he could want from me at this point. However, I agreed, mostly out of curiosity and to rid myself of the weight of the unknown. We agreed to meet on the weekend at Magnolia Cafe on South Congress. When the day arrived, I felt strange. It was like meeting with someone from another universe. Caleb arrived wearing a sweatshirt. He looked a little more mature, though he still had that confident air. We greeted each other with a brief, somewhat tense handshake. We ordered coffee and sat in a quiet corner of the diner. The first thing he said took me by surprise. "Ethan, I wanted to apologize. I know I was pretty immature in high school. When Olivia got pregnant, I took off to chase my football dream and, honestly, I never gave her the attention she deserved. And now that I see all the mess going on with her and you, I wanted to clear some things up." I simply nodded without knowing exactly what to say. He continued, "You see, I know Olivia and I didn't work out, and I have no intention of getting back together with her. But recently, one of her friends, Levi, I think, contacted me on social media saying that you were taking advantage of the situation, that you were leading Olivia on and then making her suffer. I found it curious that they bothered to look for me. I don't even live in Austin now. I'm on a semi-pro football team in Dallas. The thing is, seeing all this, I thought maybe you were being a jerk, but honestly, I don't think so. I know you a little from school, and you don't seem like that kind of person. I just wanted to hear your side of the story. Also, Olivia, a few weeks ago, sent me a message telling me something about you, but I didn't know what to think." I swallowed hard. I couldn't believe that Levi had tracked down Caleb to try to pressure me through Sophia's father. This whole thing was surreal. I summarized the story from my perspective. My reunion with Olivia, the insistence, the barrage of messages, my stance of not wanting to force a relationship out of pity or obligation, and the attacks on social media. Caleb listened attentively, nodding from time to time. "Look, I'm not here to get involved in their romantic affairs," he insisted, "but I am worried about Sophia. She's not to blame for anything, and sometimes Olivia clings to an idea of a stable family that doesn't always match reality. I, for my part, pay child support. I try to see her when I can, but I'm far away. Olivia told me that she wanted to introduce you to Sophia because she considered you responsible, a good catch, and everything. I don't know. I just hope you don't hurt her them, because Sophia already has enough with an absent father." At that moment, I felt a double burden. On the one hand, empathy towards Sophia, imagining the void of not having her father living nearby. On the other, a certain annoyance at seeing how everyone, including Caleb, projected responsibilities or blame onto me without me having really sought that role. "Look, Caleb, I'm not the villain," I replied with a sigh. "I'm not even a formal suitor. Olivia has the right to rebuild her life, and I have the right to decide whether or not I want to get involved. It's not something personal against Sophia. She's not to blame. She's an adorable girl. But I can't mold my whole life to Olivia's needs just because I've now appeared as a good candidate. That's not how relationships work." A heavy silence fell between us. Finally, Caleb shrugged. "I understand, really. I don't want you to think I called you to intimidate you. I just didn't want Sophia to end up suffering more. And I'm not going to lie. At first I thought you were a jerk who was making fun of Olivia, but now I see the story is different." The conversation didn't last much longer. We finished our coffees, shared a few words about how different the transition to adulthood had been for both of us, and said goodbye. When I left the diner, I took a deep breath and felt, contradictorily, a relief mixed with a new tension, because in a way, nothing had been resolved. Was Olivia still waiting for a clear answer from me? Would we give each other a formal chance or not? And I remained with the same conviction. No, at least not in the way she was proposing. The funny thing is, during the following days, I didn't receive any more messages from her friends. It was as if Caleb's intervention had calmed the waters. However, I knew that, at any moment, the issue could resurface. I realized that if I really wanted to bring this to a definitive close, I needed to talk to Olivia one last time, sincerely, without beating around the bush. To my surprise, it wasn't so simple. I tried calling her one Saturday at noon, but she didn't answer. Then, I sent her a text asking if we could meet. She took a while to respond. When she finally did, Her tone was very different, colder, almost curt. She said she was busy and didn't know if she would have time. That gave me a twinge of guilt. Was she finally accepting that my refusal was definitive and preferred to distance herself? The days turned into a week, and I was ready to leave things as they were. I thought, okay, maybe it's best if we each go our separate ways without making any more noise. But life had other plans. My younger sister, Lily, was getting ready to give birth at St. David's Medical Center, and my whole family was busy with preparations. Amidst all the excitement, my mother called me and told me something that stunned me. Olivia had gone to our house looking to talk to me, a twist I absolutely did not expect. She came with Sophia, Ethan, my mother explained, and said she needed to see you urgently. When I told her you were at the hospital supporting your sister, she got serious and left. She didn't specify why she wanted to see you. What urgency could Olivia have now? Was Sophia all right? Did something happen with Caleb? I felt trapped between family responsibilities and uncertainty about Olivia's sudden visit, but I couldn't simply ignore the birth of my niece. I decided that, once my sister and the baby were stable, I would look for Olivia again to clear things up once and for all. I was about to be immersed in a mix of family euphoria and personal tension, unaware that, in that next conversation with Olivia, I would discover much deeper reasons behind her insistence. And those reasons, to my surprise, would make me rethink not only my relationship with her, but also the priorities of my life. Fate would have it that, a few days later, my parents organized a small family gathering to celebrate the newest member of the family. It was a very intimate affair. My uncles, my grandmother, some cousins, and of course, my sister with her newborn baby were there. I was trying to disconnect from all the recent drama, focusing on supporting Lily. In the middle of the gathering, my mother approached me with a serious look and said, "Son, Olivia called again this morning. She says she needs to see you today." She sounded upset. Though I hesitated, intrigue got the better of me. I decided to send Olivia a message, suggesting we meet in the afternoon, once the family gathering was over. She replied almost immediately, giving me her location, Zilker Park, a few blocks from Westlake High. It was impossible not to feel a chill thinking about all those memories. After saying goodbye to my family, I drove to the park. Upon arriving, I saw her sitting on a bench, looking somewhat lost in thought. Sophia was a few meters away, playing in the sandbox with a bucket and shovel. I approached slowly, and Olivia stood up abruptly when she saw me. The wind gently blew her hair, and, for a moment, I remembered the smiling girl running on the track during high school. However, now her face looked more tired, perhaps from the tension of the last few weeks. "Ethan, thank you for coming," she said in a melancholic tone. "Are you and Sophia okay?" I asked. "My mother told me you were worried." Olivia nodded, her eyes a little glassy. "Yes, we're fine, but I needed to talk to you. I wanted to explain the real reason why I approached you with such insistence. I know I gave you the impression that I was just looking for a relationship, and it's not that I'm not interested, but there's more." I invited her to sit back down on the bench and glanced at Sophia, making sure she was still entertained. Olivia let out a very long sigh and began her story. Her father had recently lost his job, and the family's financial situation had become much more complicated than she imagined. She worked part-time at a daycare and sometimes gave private lessons in children's gymnastics, but it wasn't enough to cover Sophia's expenses and contribute something at home. "Caleb gives me a little child support," she explained, "but sometimes he's late, or it's just not the amount he promised me. My parents, on the other hand, have their own health problems and debts. I'm drowning, Ethan. When I saw that you had become a successful, independent, stable person, I thought that maybe you could help me, either as a partner or as support. I understand that it's not your responsibility, but I was so scared of being trapped with no way out that I resorted to that pressure that ended up suffocating you." Her words moved me. At the same time, they caused me some conflict. How much of my achievements and apparent prosperity had motivated her to force a rapprochement? Maybe it was more desperation than love? For a moment, I felt a mixture of pity for her situation and a pang of anger at understanding that I had been a rescue plan in her eyes. "Olivia," I said calmly, "I'm not indifferent to your situation, believe me, but it hurts that you hid it from me. If you had been honest with me from the beginning, we would have talked differently. I'm not your enemy, and your daughter isn't to blame for anything. Olivia began to cry silently. I know, and I'm sorry. I was selfish, and at the same time, I was afraid to admit it openly. Maybe I thought that if I won you over first, you would be more committed to us. It's humiliating to ask for help without a real relationship, but I tried to cling to the illusion that we could be a family. I allowed myself a few seconds to reflect. It was clear to me that I didn't love her enough to be her partner at that moment, much less to suddenly become Sophia's father figure. Still, I didn't want to turn my back on Olivia's difficult situation. My upbringing and my values told me not to be cruel. I gently placed my hand on her shoulder and offered a compromise. I'll propose something. I can't be your partner just because of your financial urgency or for Sophia's sake. That wouldn't work. But we can maintain an honest friendship, Olivia. I can guide you if you're looking for a better job, give you a hand with some contacts at my company. Administrative positions are always coming up. I could also recommend you to other daycares or children's activity centers. I want to help you get ahead, but I don't want you to confuse that with romantic love, or for your friends to pressure me again. Olivia, with tears still rolling down her face, looked at me with a glimmer of hope. Would you really do that for me, after the way I behaved? I nodded. Deep down, I still remembered the girl who made me sigh as a teenager, and I wasn't going to deny the bond we once shared, even if it was one-sided on my part. Besides, Sophia didn't deserve an environment full of hardship. It wasn't my obligation, but if I could give them a little help, I would, without compromising my values or my life plan. Only on the condition that everything is clear, I insisted. That you understand that I'm not giving you a romantic chance. If, in the future, something genuine arises, it will be fate. But, for now, what I offer is my hand in friendship. Olivia nodded, and in her eyes I saw relief. We got up and walked towards Sophia, who was smiling with the innocence of a child unaware of all the adult drama. Olivia took her hand and formally introduced me. Sophia, this is Ethan, a friend of Mommy's. I was talking to you about him when we went to the store a few days ago. Sophia looked at me curiously and, after a moment of hesitation, proudly showed me the small sandcastle she had built. I told her it was a fantastic castle, and the girl laughed. It was a tender moment that, in a way, confirmed that I was making the right decision, neither ignoring Olivia and Sophia nor shouldering a responsibility that wasn't mine. A middle ground based on sincerity and empathy. From that day on, things calmed down considerably. Olivia's friends stopped writing to me. Maybe she talked to them herself to stop them from interfering. We didn't become a couple, but I stayed in touch to give her information about possible jobs and basic financial advice I had learned in my career. Caleb, for his part, continued living his life in Dallas and, although he never became the most present father, he tried to be a little more punctual with his child support payments. I, meanwhile, continued to grow in my cybersecurity company. I was even offered the opportunity to travel to San Francisco to participate in a network security project. It was a new opportunity to take a professional leap. When I asked Olivia how she would feel if I left, she smiled a little sadly, but wished me the best. Ethan, if you're going to San Francisco, I'll understand. Seriously, don't tie yourself to this place. If what you're offering me is your friendship, you don't need to live in the same city to help me with advice or contacts. I'll always be grateful. And so, suitcase in hand, I set off for a new chapter in my life, satisfied that I hadn't completely broken ties with Olivia, but equally relieved that I hadn't succumbed to a forced relationship due to the pressure of others. Perhaps, in another universe, we would have been a couple, or we would have tried. In this one, we were, at least, two adults capable of dialogue and finding a balance without pretending to feign feelings that didn't exist. The moral of the story: sometimes, the past brings us back together with people who rejected us, or whom we rejected, and that can stir up old insecurities. But maturity lies in recognizing our intentions and limits, and knowing when it's worth lending a hand without confusing help with responsibility. Neither love nor compassion can be forced for mere convenience. Sincerity, however harsh, will always be preferable to self-deception. If you liked it, don't forget to leave a comment and support the channel by subscribing. See you in the next story.